In this video, I'm going to show you how to load a bunch of images into Photoshop to make an animated GIF. For this example, I'm just going to use the images that were used in our exercise for novelty, but you should have all of your compositions for your project exported and saved somewhere at the exact same size, ideally something like 1080 by 1080. So I just have a Photoshop document open. This doesn't particularly matter because for this process, we are actually going to create a new document. But the first thing I'm going to do is go to File, down to Scripts, and then Load Files into Stack. What this is going to do is let me select files, and it's going to open them all in separate layers. So Files is fine here. You can select Folder if they're in a specific place. I'm going to go to Browse, and then you can see in this folder I just have all of the images exported from that exercise. So I'm going to select them all, hit OK, and this part will take a second as it starts to open these up and add them to new layers in this file. So I'll let this process finish, and then I'll be right back when this is done. Okay, so you can see this looks pretty sloppy. If these were all the same size, these would load in a much nicer way. But you also want to make sure, just in case it's not, that your image size is the right size that you want it to be. So these are smaller because the images were much smaller, but yours should be something like 1080 by 1080. And then the next part of this, we're going to turn all of these layers into individual frames in an animation. So you can see that what that script did was it loaded all the images in on a separate layer over here. So Photoshop actually has a timeline feature. You can go to Window. You can turn on the timeline down here. There's also a workspace for it if you go to Workspace and then down to Motion. But the thing you want to make sure you get is this timeline panel down at the bottom. We click Frame Animation. What we're going to do next, we're actually going to select the little hamburger menu over here. And then we are going to select Make Frames from Layers. So it's going to take each layer and it's going to put it in a separate frame. So now you see that each one of these is a separate frame that's playing for 0 seconds. I can hit the play button and you can start to see what this might look like. Usually this is a little slower than it will actually play. You could rearrange your frames down here if you wanted to swap the order of things. You could also change the duration that each one is playing for. So for example, I could hold Shift, select my first and last frame to select everything in between, and then change the delay to something like 0.2 seconds, and these would take longer to play through. Once you're happy with the sequence and timing of these, to get this out as a GIF, you'll go to File, Export. We can't use Export As, we have to use Save for Web Legacy. And this lets us get the GIF as an animation on the export. For this, we really don't need transparency, so I'm going to uncheck that to make a slightly smaller file. You can preview it in here. I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And just save it in the same folder there. And once that's finished, I'll just double check that it's in there. And here is my final GIF.